On September 17th, the Swedish military factory Saab Group officially handed over 5 new upgraded Asian artillery radar systems to the British Army. The new type of artillery radar will be deployed in the 5th Royal Artillery Regiment and will be codenamed Typen in the UK. We all know that the British Army has been disarming troops in recent years. By 2025, the scale will be reduced to 72,500 people. But no matter how you disarm troops, the British Army is always willing to pay to update the artillery radar. So what advantages does this kind of equipment have, and what can it be used for in wartime? I don't know if you've heard of the saying, that is, in a modern battlefield, if there are no troops to cover the artillery, once the enemy fires, there are only 4 minutes left to survive. Therefore, the current artillery troops of all countries are pursuing an automated deployment as much as possible. It is best to move to the next place as soon as you finish firing a round of artillery. Otherwise, the enemy's retaliation will come soon. It may sound a little creepy, but the reason why this phenomenon occurs is because of the existence of artillery radar. Take the new type of Asian artillery radar that the British Army has received this time. This type of radar can reverse track the launch of the enemy's artillery and rocket bombs, quickly locating the location of the enemy's artillery bombs. Enemy artillery and multiple rocket guns within a radius of 50 kilometers can be positioned by the artillery radar. Compared with the old type of Asian radar, the new type of Asian radar has upgraded the AESA radar technology, which can quickly change the direction of the radar wave, achieve rapid search and tracking of the target, and calculate the trajectory of the enemy's artillery bombs based on the location and speed of the target. In a very short time, it can reverse track the direction of the launch of the artillery bombs, and with the excellent three-dimensional positioning technology, the AESA radar can not only locate the location of the enemy's artillery bombs, but also immediately give the target data required when several artillery bombs attack the enemy's artillery bombs. In this way, it can achieve a series of actions to capture, track, and counterattack, effectively suppressing the enemy's artillery actions. In addition, the new type of ASA radar can track and process more than 100 targets at the same time, and can also monitor some of the air surveillance functions in the anti-aircraft workstate. Although it is not as good as the professional anti-aircraft radar, AESA can also provide some additional data information for the military anti-aircraft radar as a support for air defense in this area. So far, the AESA series of anti-aircraft radars have been deployed in 13 countries, 6 of which are NATO countries, and the Ukrainian army is also one of the users, which is half a year after the start of the Russian-Ukrainian war as a team support weapon. As the support period is relatively early, the AESA radar used by the Russian army is not the latest upgraded model, but according to the current performance of Russian artillery, the performance of this batch of radars is actually enough. When the Russian army uses a missile, the AESA radar can effectively lock the position of the Russian artillery when it is 25 kilometers away from the firing point. If the Russian army uses a mortar, the AESA radar can capture the opposite direction when it is 40 kilometers away from the enemy. Some of you may find it strange. Why is the maximum anti-aircraft distance of the missile radar different from that of a missile and a mortar? This is actually related to the flight speed of the missiles and the detection error rate of the missile launchers themselves. Let's take the old AESA radar as an example. When it is facing the enemy's mortar, the detection accuracy of the enemy's artillery position can reach a horizontal error of less than 8 meters and a front and rear error of less than 12 meters. To be able to achieve this kind of detection accuracy, it basically does not interfere with the counterattack of several artillery units. After all, the missile is a range killer, and this error of about 10 meters does not affect the battle situation at all. Even a 60mm caliber mortar, the range of the killer is also within 10 to 20 meters. If you use a 105mm or 105mm caliber medium-sized grenade launcher, the range of the missile killer can even exceed 50 meters. So for an ASA radar, the detection accuracy error of less than 10 meters is really unparalleled. But to simply discuss the detection accuracy of the artillery radar itself, the source of the launch of the mortar shell is indeed easier to track and return to speed than the grenade launcher. This is because the grenade launcher flies faster, and the initial firing distance will be further. Let's take the American M119 105mm caliber grenade launcher as an example. After replacing the HE high explosive shell, the launch speed of the shell can even exceed 1,100 meters per second. In contrast, the American M252 Type 81mm caliber mortar shell has a launch speed of only about 110 meters per second. Therefore, compared with the mortar shell, the grenade launcher will bring greater difficulty to the reconnaissance work of the artillery radar and will also increase the error when the radar returns to the enemy's position. Of course, this error can also be compensated by increasing the firepower and expanding the range of the killer. After all, if you really go to the battlefield, there should be no one to save those few grenades. And even the old Yas radar in the hands of the Russian army can scan hundreds of targets in a minute. The flight situation of the enemy's grenade launcher calculates the location of multiple sources of fire. As long as there are enough reference samples for the enemy's location data, it can constantly correct the opponent's position for the Ukrainian artillery troops, and thus quickly counterattack the Russian artillery troops. Perhaps the Swedish Saab Group has also gradually discovered that its own Yas artillery radar was not only popular before, but now also participates in the actual combat of the Russian warfare. This means that there must be a lot of people doing research on anti-Yas radar now. Therefore, in this year's latest upgraded Yas radar, Saab Group has further improved the automation function of the radar. The new radar obtained by the UK can work in a state where one person can accompany or even no one can accompany, and it only takes 2 minutes to complete the movement and deployment. And within 5 minutes after the deployment, the artillery radar can turn on all functions. And the Yas radar itself already has low infrared operating mode and certain electronic warfare capabilities. It is difficult for the enemy to search and suppress the Yas radar. Even if the enemy found the Yas radar, the radar antenna can still operate with injury after being attacked by light weapons and grenades. Continue to work with the remaining perfect electronic components to provide the army with certain radar detection assistance. If the Russian army can get the latest upgraded Yas radar, I believe the ability to counter the Russian artillery troops will be further enhanced. But then again, Yas is actually just one of the current artillery radar sources obtained by the Russian army. It is also not the earliest artillery radar handed down to the Ukrainian army. According to the news from the Ukrainian Military Center, as early as October 2022, before the Russian army got the Yas, Germany had already assisted the Russian army with a number of Cobra glass snake artillery radars. The glass snake artillery radar was jointly built by the French Thales European Air Defense Department and the American Roma Company. At present, equipment is available in France, Germany, the UK, and Ukraine. Compared with the new Yas radar, the number of artillery shells that the glass snake can track at the same time may not be so many. It can only identify about 40 artillery shells at the same time. However, each radar antenna has about 2,000 kVk integrated circuits. The equipment's maximum detection distance from the enemy artillery position is more than twice that of the Yas radar, reaching a level of 100,000 meters. What is the concept of 100,000 meters? Let's take the Russian RS-35, a 152.4 millimeter caliber, self-propelled artillery. The maximum range of this artillery is only 80,000 meters, and this new artillery is already the most advanced in the same type of Russian weapons. Although the RS-35 also participated in the Russian-Ukrainian war, it is still relatively small and only produced more than 10. The RS-19, which it should replace, is the main self-propelled artillery that the Russian military currently has a relatively large number of. Since it was deployed in the Soviet Army in 1989, it has produced more than 1,100. This type of artillery, regardless of which type of shell is used, has a maximum range of about 30,000 meters. The glass snake artillery radar can fully respond. In fact, since the outbreak of the Russian-Ukrainian war, the Russian military has lost more than 170 RS-19s. Some of them were captured by the Ukrainian army and were not all destroyed in the war. At present, at least 50 RS-19 self-propelled artillery have been captured by the Ukrainian army, and it should not all be the credit of the Ukrainian artillery radar, because the Russian military has abandoned a lot of military equipment, not to mention the artillery radar. Tanks, armored trucks have all been abandoned on the battlefield and captured by the Russian army. However, in this Russian-Ukrainian war, the performance of the Russian artillery has not been obvious, but has become a consensus. As early as July 2023, Independent military observer Orif Yaroshanda said on social media that the Russian military's 58th Brigadier General in charge of the Russian military in the Zaporizhzhia region, General Popov pointed out that due to the Russian military's lack of anti-Ukrainian artillery and artillery radar, the Russian military has suffered many losses in the war. Perhaps it is due to the failure of the Russian artillery that General Popov asked the Russian military to temporarily relocate his troops out of the front and return to the rear for repair. Perhaps his request caused the Russian military to be dissatisfied, and he was removed from the leadership of the 58th Brigadier General in July 2023. However, according to Popov himself, he was dismissed not only because of the lack of anti-Ukrainian artillery in the front. He also said that the Russian military should take a different strategy from the Russian military. Therefore, Russian General Gerasimov has many accusations against Popov. Of course, however, in the face of Bobov's comments, Gerasimov also said that this was a complete rumor. Bobov himself was also arrested on May 17th this year for fraud. I don't know if there is a link between the two. However, Dabin still wants to point out here that although Bobov once complained that the Russian army lacked artillery radars, but lack does not mean no. Or maybe it's because of Bobov's complaints that the Russian army sent more artillery radars to the frontline troops later. This includes the Russian new type of artillery radar, the established VV, which cost $2.5 billion. Dabin then replaced it with the British radar. And the most unexpected thing is that in January this year, the British radar, which had just been sent to the Russian military battlefield, was soon destroyed by the Russian army with the HMS rocket. In July this year, the Russian army also used two GMLRS, a long-range rocket that was built by the Roman company to destroy the British radar. But then again, the British radar was destroyed over and over again. It may not have been caused by the loss of this equipment, because no matter how advanced the artillery radar is, it is also a weapon that counterattacks enemy artillery. In addition to tracking and attacking enemy artillery, the artillery radar itself cannot completely escape the search and strike from other routes. In fact, according to the Defense Express, Ukraine also took out a more advanced means of enemy reconnaissance in July this year. That is the Zvezda Space Reconnaissance Target System. The Russian army used this system to lock a base 450 kilometers away from the Russian front line and successfully launched a drone attack. Since the Russian army can use the Space Target Reconnaissance System to spy on the Russian military base, it is natural that it will use the Space Reconnaissance System to find large equipment deployed by the Russian army on the front line and which areas are distributed. If this is really the case, then it is not good news for the British radar of the Russian army. Because the Russian army lost the British radar, the Russian army can only rely on the Dongyuan 1 series radar inherited from the former Soviet Union. This type of radar has been developed since the 1970s. The Russian army is now using the EM-3, which has been upgraded and can track 12 targets at the same time. However, compared with the Western mainstream artillery radar, the Dongyuan 1 is slightly behind in performance. It still uses a 3-axis single-pulse charge radar, facing 81 mm to 120 mm, Ko Jingpo Jipao. It can only be sensed at a distance of about 20 kilometers. Facing 105 mm and 155 mm, Ko Jing Liu Dan Pao, the effective detection distance is mainly concentrated at 15 to 20 kilometers. This obviously can no longer support the current needs of the Russian army. Even equipment with this performance is no longer advanced, and now there is a loss phenomenon on the front line. As early as August 2002, the news of the Dongyuan artillery radar being destroyed by the U.S. military was constantly circulating on the internet. In fact, it is not surprising that this situation occurs, because the Dongyuan has a maximum detection distance of 155 millimeters, which is 25 kilometers. And the new self-propelled grenade launchers developed by various countries have already exceeded the maximum detection range of the Dongyuan radar in terms of range. For example, the latest M1299 self-propelled grenade launched by the U.S. military has an effective range of 70 kilometers. The maximum range of special missiles can even reach 110 kilometers. From this point of view, the artillery radar of each country must be greatly updated. Otherwise, it will really be impossible to match the range of the cannons in the future. In fact, in the end, The Army thought of a person, that is, one of the former Soviet radio-controlled weapons engineers, Ivan Novikov. He was the first person in the world to complete the anti-tank gun fire control radar design. In the field of artillery radar, he has made great contributions to the development of the Luda artillery aiming system. Decades have passed, but the Russian military has been under pressure on the battlefield over and over again because of the artillery radar problem. It is also very moving. I don't know what you think about this. Please share your thoughts in the comment section. After knowing the related knowledge of artillery radar in the next equipment information column, let's take a look at the F-35 fighter's DSI radar. Sometimes the advanced features of an equipment can be seen from its details. Thank you for your company. Like and subscribe my channel. See you next time.